Totally. And that's tour life. Like, that's the range of things that can happen to you as an artist. You can either be waking up in cat pee, or you can be waking up alone in a $4,000 hotel room going, why am I lonely?
Welcome to Music Career Therapy, brought to you by artistmanagers.io. From practical advice to inspiring stories from those who have made it big, made a mess, or were just lucky enough to make it out alive, this podcast is your guide to surviving and thriving in the music business. Whether you're just starting out or looking for new ways to grow your existing career, thanks for joining us on Music Career Therapy. Welcome to Music Career Therapy. Our guest today is Shannon Herber. She travels the globe advising artists and others about emerging technologies for music. She's also worked for the Grammy Awards as the head of the pop and dance electronic genres, and prior to that, she worked as a tour manager for Moby and a publicist at Universal Music. That's just a few of the amazing things she's done, so please welcome Shannon. Nice to have you here.
Hey, Mike. Hello. Nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So I know you've had a number of roles in your music career. Started out, at least when I first met you, working in artist management, and then moved on to the Grammy Awards, where we saw each other again. And now you're deeply into tech and music. So what's your story and what's your favorite work you've done so far?
Yeah, thank you so much. That's such a good question. It's good to see you again. I know that we've definitely intersected multiple times in this crazy music industry world. Actually, a band that we are both friends with gave me my start, the South Carolina-based band formerly known as Jump Little Children. And when I moved out to Los Angeles about 20 years ago to go to graduate school, their manager needed an assistant. And so, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, started working for a manager and realized that I really enjoyed being in the music industry. I mean, I knew that before because I was a theater kid and always played a bunch of instruments and things like that. But this was the first time I got to see the business side of things and realized that even if my personal a sense of self wasn't built for the constant rejection of being an artist, I could still be around artists and help them succeed. And that was just as fulfilling as being an artist myself. So that got me started. And right after that, I was able to jump over to being a publicist for Universal Music Group, which was great. I worked for Universal Music Enterprises, which is the catalog department of Universal Music Group. And what I really enjoyed about that is that I got to work for my heroes. So it's a lot easier to, let's say, when you've got the Nirvana catalog or the Bob Marley catalog or the 10th anniversary of a Lisa Loeb album, it's a lot easier as a publicist to work that record because people either want it or they don't. If I'm hawking a Styx record, I don't have to push anybody. You either are going to talk about it or you're not. And I didn't have to worry about Frontline, which is a lot of pushing of baby bands. But I also got to go on the road with the Temptations and go on the road with Def Leppard and people that I really admired. So I definitely really enjoyed being a catalog publicist. But again, being on the road ended up being something that I got the bug for after I'd done it a few times as a publicist. And I said, I really want to do this all the time. And so through my work in LA as an event producer, which I had done on the side, worked the Oscars and the AMAs and the VMAs and all that kind of stuff, I ultimately was able to get a job working with Moby, as you mentioned. And so I became his director of operations when we were at home in Los Angeles. And then any other things that he needed to do when we would travel, he would travel both as a DJ and then as a full band. And the full band show was usually international because he's a bit more well-known and beloved outside of the United States. And so I was his tour manager for all of his DJ shows. And then we would have a full tour and production manager and full band and all those sorts of things when we would do international shows that were his full band shows. So toured with him for about 3.5 years. And then decided I wanted to get off the road. And that's where both of our former employers, the Grammys, comes in. Worked for them for 7 years, started as a production manager for the lovely Los Angeles chapter. Shout out to Los Angeles chapter. And then moved over to be the head of pop and dance electronic music for the awards department. So that means that I managed the pop and the dance electronic categories. So at the time, those were 6, 4 pop categories and 2 dance categories. And that was amazing. I really enjoyed that work, but just needed a new challenge after 7 years. And so last year, I moved on to being the managing director of Aokiverse, which is Steve Aoki's NFT project. It's been super successful. We're working on potentially bringing on new clients and introducing other artists into Web3 and how they can utilize that technology for them, for their own fans and themselves, creating a new revenue stream, all those fun things. So yeah, so I'm kind of in a very unexpected place of being in the intersection of music and tech, which is not some place I ever thought that I would be, because I'm the least likely person. I have like no social media. I do not like technology. I'm definitely not an early adopter. I'm usually like, I don't know, get the kids off my lawn. I'll figure it out when I have to. Like I don't have a TikTok, but I'm here and I actually really love it now. So
That's great. Well, I didn't know you had done so much tour managing. That I know is an incredibly demanding job. And I also know, having toured myself, just how intense that can be in a macho sort of world. How, as a woman working in tour management, which is a rarity, how was that for you? And what sort of tricks would you advise for women who are tour managing, how to survive that particular environment?
Oh, such a good question. It's interesting because I think we were, talking before about jobs that you both love and then also maybe jobs that can be mentally taxing. And that is 1,000% tour management and being on the road. And absolutely, thank you for mentioning it as a woman. Every tour I've ever done, I've been one of the only women. I've definitely been the only woman on crew. And if there are women, they're usually vocalists. I think maybe a couple of our tours got lucky where our vocalist was a woman, and then we had a female bass player as well. But yeah, women in touring, particularly as tour managers, as be the people who enjoy your artist's music night after night, and to put on the spectacle and everything that we all as artists and business people and performers and all those sorts of things, the rush of the crowd, the joy, the energy of putting it on, as a fan myself, all the things I love about going to a U2 show or a Maggie Rogers show or whatever, the sharing of that music with people, you still get that experience as someone who is making it happen. But it can be absolutely mentally taxing. The hours are crazy, especially for crew. You're usually first in, last out. If you're on a bus tour, the sleep you're getting is on a moving bus every night. You may not have hotel rooms to yourself. If you maybe have a hotel room during the day, it's probably just for shower use. It can be very draining on your mental health, your personal relationships with your family if you're never around. So, you really do have to weigh out the pros and cons, both I think for you as a person, whether or not it's okay for you, and then especially for us as women. A lot of the crew guys that I knew are really good dudes, but they were able to have kind of both a home life and a road life because they had wives at home who were taking care of the children and keeping the house together and all those sorts of things, so that they could go on the road and not worry about it and still come home and then have a family life. Whereas the women that I knew did not have that option. There were very few of us who were dating men who understood the idea of, okay, my job is that I'm gone 6 to 9 months out of the year, and you just have to keep the home fires burning. Many men are not down with that. Plus, they maybe get jealous and are like, who are you hanging out with? You're out there with all men. And you're like, yeah, that's actually a really scary proposition. This is not a good thing. I don't want to be like constantly surrounded by dudes, like, I think this is not as exciting as you imagine it would be in reverse. So once you get past the jealousy, then you have to get past the this is actually really scary for women. And you have to know your crew really well. And you have to know your artists really well. You have to know your artist management really well. One thing to answer the secondary question that you had, what is the advice that I would give women, young women thinking about going in? I would say, luckily, I think things are a little bit different now. There are many women that I know of who are front of house or monitor engineers or tour managers, whatever they're doing, And we're all making a concerted effort to know each other so that there is both the whisper network of the warnings of, hey, don't work with or for this person, so that we're letting people know ahead of time or letting women know ahead of time. And then there's also the, hey, I'm on this tour. It's a great tour. I would love to have more women on this tour. We would take care of each other. So making sure that they're bringing on younger women. I think they've also done a really good job of breaking down a lot of barriers and saying this type of behavior is not okay, whatever that behavior might be. And they're calling a lot of folks out on it. So there's more of an effort, I think, of the system as a whole to hold people accountable, to remember that this is a workplace. We're not all drinking and having fun and just carousing all the time, and we get to put on a rock show and then we get to go out and do whatever. It's like, yeah, this is also, especially if there's money involved, especially if it's like big cap venues and or arenas, this is a business. And trying to remind people of that, I think, is good for women. Also, the last thing I would say is one of the tried and true ways to make sure that as a woman on the road, you're treated well is have a female artist, because power rolls downhill. And if you have a female artist, these days, more often than not, she's going to want more female crew than male crew. She's going to make that effort. Her management is going to make that effort. There are going to be little things that you would never think of on the bus or on the planes or whatever. That woman, as the artist with the power, is going to build into her tour. And so that means that female crew are going to be able to take advantage of that. It's going to make it a better working environment for everyone. So I know that was a very long answer, but this is one of the areas of my career about which I'm very passionate, because it was both my absolute favorite thing to do, and I think the thing that was the most stressful.
I can believe that. I've done a little bit of tour managing actually for Jump Little Children, which is all dudes.
Yep.
And I think when you get gender mixes working together, it can work, but it can also have a lot of friction. Whereas if you get an all male crew, that's an easy way to go, and it doesn't necessarily cause as much friction. And if you have at least a crew that's got a decent number of women that are supporting each other, it also keeps the behavior in a better spot, hopefully.
Yeah. Right. Well, and you're right. That's kind of also something to remember, right? Is there's a reason that we have mixed gender workplaces and mixed gender everything, is that, as much as I'd hate to say it, I've been told multiple times that tours are much more civil with women on them. And you're like, yeah, shocker. But also, it does bring down this sort of like bro level, and you're less likely, all in all, to have things go massively wrong because it's not as much of a frat house anymore. But yeah, I mean, listen, I remember a couple Jump Little Children tours where I think it was Jump and maybe Borrowed Angels and, someone else from the scene. And Carrie Ann Hurst might have been the only woman on that tour. And she's a formidable woman. But at the time, it would not have occurred to me to ask her how she was doing. And now it would be the first thought in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to change channels just a tiny bit, I know you've also been involved in the electronic and dance music scene for a long time, and that's been an area of music that you're deeply into. And you've worked with some amazing acts, from Moby to Sophie Tucker and Sylvan Esso. Who are some of the artists that inspire you, and what are they doing that makes them successful?
I do love dance and electronic music. I kind of always loved it from a fan standpoint, not even really realizing that it was dance and electronic music at the time, just being like, oh, I love Basement Jaxx and Massive Attack and a lot of European-based, Ministry of Sound releases, Paul Oakenfold, all those sorts of those folks, Pete Tong, anybody really from like 90s and 2000s, British and Irish dance. Love those folks. And once I started working for Moby, A, he was friends with a lot of those people. And then B, I was like, oh, wait, this is a whole scene. Okay. And once I got into it, it was like, oh, yeah, I've always loved this music as a fan. It just had really never occurred to me, probably because I'm American, that I could work in this as a career. And so I got into it and loved it. And Moby's great. He's very into animal rights. He definitely has used his platform for good, I would say, more often than not. So I really respect him, and he was a great boss. And in terms of artists that I've worked with from the Grammy side or just in life, you mentioned Sophie Tucker, and they are wonderful, wonderful people. I very much admire them. They're one of the people that I actually think about when I think about good tours, because Sophie and Tucker make a real concerted effort to have a gender balance on their tour. They try to make life very, I mean, I guess I don't want to say pleasant, but at the same time, they really make an effort to like build in days off for everyone so that there's mental health. They're very good about having healthy food on the road, about having physical therapists and yoga and things like that. You know, they want everyone to stay healthy so that it is a sustainable activity for all of them because they're still young and they want to have a very long career. And so rather than burning out, which is very easy to do, particularly in dance electronic, because those shows are very late. You know, doors open at 6, openers on by 8, headliners on by 9:30, 10, you're out the door by midnight, right? That's not how it works in the dance electronic world. Those shows are on late. You're doing a lot of them. You might be doing multiple in one day because maybe you're doing a morning festival and then you're moving on and then maybe you're doing an evening headlining spot and then maybe you're doing a 2 a.m. DJ spot. You could potentially be working yourself to the grave. So both as people who make amazing music and who care a lot about the world and humanity and the industry, they're doing, I think, a very good job of trying to maintain a mentally healthy work environment so that everyone who works with them, not just them, has a sustainable career. So they really inspire me for sure as people and as artists. I think also what they put out is great. So I'm a big fan of Sophie Tucker. And then LPGOB is another one. She is a DJ. She's friends with Sophie Tucker. And, you know, we were talking about the boards, the charity boards that I'm on. And one of them is hers, which is called Femme House, created by Her Mix-a-Lot and LPGOB, two artists that I just love. I think they're great people. And what they do is it's a charity that's focused on bringing more women, non-binary folks, marginalized communities into the engineering and producing parts of the music industry to try and help continue to create a gender balance there. Because most of those folks, if you want to work on the back end, continuing as a producer engineer, that's great. But all of that technical stuff also translates very easily to being an artist within the dance electronic community because you obviously are learning those same techniques. I really enjoy working with them. I think LP is an amazing artist. She's really coming up in the scene right now. So I'm very excited to work with her as well. So yeah, I would say those are a few artists that really inspire me right now.
Cool. You've been in the business for a while, and I know you worked with JC, who's the manager for Jump Little Children and a few others. But who are some of your mentors and heroes that you've worked with?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, JC, known as John Caldwell to folks not in the music industry, was definitely like one of my very first mentors and still is. He's great. He actually is in the tech world, the crypto world with me now. He moved from music to poker not so long ago. And so now he had been one of the founders of a site called Poker Stars. And so moved out of the music industry and now has been crushing it doing that. We hung out and got dinner last year at NFT NYC. So it was interesting to see both of us having moved into different but same arenas. So yeah, 20 years later, he still is someone that I consider to be a mentor and a friend because he was very willing to get me started in the music industry and was always such a good person about it. It was never the stories you hear about predatory men or, hey, do this for me because I think you're pretty. He always was just like, no, you're really smart and you love what you do and you've got good ears. So let me help you out. And I really appreciated that. So for sure, shout out to John Caldwell.
Yeah, he's a great dude. I flew from, where was it? I think from LA to Sardinia with JC. So we did a USO show together. And
I was working in the office at the time, and I remember being so jealous that you all were going on that tour.
We spent more time on airplanes than we did on the ground, but it was mighty nice. He's a good travel dude.
He is really fun, right? I know. That's funny. You did a USO tour to like what? Some fancy like Croatia or some fancy place in Europe. I did a USO tour to Guam. So not the same.
Not quite the same. Doesn't quite have the cultural cachet of Sardinia, but you know.
Nope. Exactly.
It's funny how you're in the music business and you get these moments where things can be just crazy cool. And then the next week, you're like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened in my life.
Accurate. Totally accurate. And you actually bring up a really good point, because that's something that Moby and I used to talk about as well. Like, in terms of mental health, like the whiplash of going on stage and particularly, as an artist, having the adulation of all those fans and then walking away from it and potentially going into a hotel room where it's literally just you. Because when you get to be a bigger artist, that's kind of what happens, is you get put in this bubble and they trot you out to perform and then they pack you back up and they put you in your own little like hermetically sealed bubble, right? Where you like can't talk to anybody unless you pay them, or, they've been a friend of yours for forever. So you get very disconnected from the world. So this like whiplash of, oh wait, 50,000 people were just screaming my name, to why am I sitting alone in my hotel room? It really does a number on you.
Yeah. And depending on the level of artist you are, for instance, my band, I think we toured 1,200 shows and we got about 27 hotel rooms during that whole 8-year stretch. Most of the time we slept on the floor of our fans' houses or a bar, the guy running the bar.
Yeah.
That, in fact, in Columbia, South Carolina, I do remember waking up in cat pee. Under the bar of the bartender from the club. So those sorts of things happen too.
Totally. And that's tour life. Like, that's the range of things that can happen to you as an artist. You can either be waking up in cat pee, or you can be waking up alone in a $4,000 hotel room going, why am I lonely? So
yeah. So even when you're at the top, it doesn't always feel that way, no matter how expensive the room.
That's right.
Or not expensive at all.
Right, totally.
Yeah.
I do want to mention another one of my mentors who is super, like, I will love her to death forever. Sujata Murthy, who is currently the executive vice president of publicity at Universal Music Enterprises, was one of my very first bosses. She, I was actually working for her and JC at the same time, because I was getting paid a very minuscule amount, but still money coming in from JC. But I was doing a free internship at Universal while I was also in grad school. So I was working for JC, interning at Universal Music, working at Ann Taylor Loft to actually make some money to pay the rent, and then also going to University of Southern California for grad school at night. It was a lot all at once. But she kind of did the same thing that JC did and had said, wow, you're really smart. You're really passionate about this. I see that this is something that you like. You would always get told back in the early 2000s, if you can do something else, do it. Because the music industry is crumbling, streaming is coming, and it's the worst thing ever. And I was like, listen, I know that you all are comparing this to the 90s and the 80s where you just had endless amounts of free money. But music and the artists will always be there. And that's where I want to be, is wherever that's happening. Maybe I won't make a ton of money at it. I know I'll be happier. So as many times as JC and Sujata both said, if you can do anything else, we recommend you go do it, I was like, nope, I'm good. I'm sticking around, thanks. And so I think because of that, they both were like, all right, this poor girl, she's not going to do anything else, so we got to do the best we can to help her. And so even though there wasn't a job available for me when I graduated from USC, she helped me get my first actual full-time paying job as a junior publicist. And then a year and a half later, called me back and said, hey, we have a slot. Do you want to come back? And I was like, absolutely. And awesome. So similarly to JC, yeah, oh my gosh. And she fought for me too for my first salary. She was like, I'm going to teach you how the base is always the best number you're going to get, because your raises after that are going to be percentage based on what you get when you started. So she fought for me to get more money. She jumped me up a couple of levels. Rather than starting as a coordinator, she started me as a manager. And had I stayed, I would have been a director by the time I was 26, because she believed in me that much and was willing to help me both on a personal and professional level to sort of teach me the ropes. I loved working for her and with her, and she's amazing. She does that for everyone that she believes in. She's one of the best mentors and bosses. I think anyone who works for her, like, we will follow her to the ends of the earth for sure. But she also one day came to me and said, listen, you're too smart to be doing this. And, you're not going to be making any money, unfortunately, doing this. And I want you to go out and do the best you can do. And I know that you love touring and you love all these other things. So don't stay here. And I will forever be grateful for that, because it would have been very easy for her to say, I have this team member who I love, who I know is really good at the work. She makes my job easier. I don't want to have to find someone new. I want to keep her. So she could have very easily just done that. But instead, she encouraged me as a person to follow all of my passions, regardless of what they were, and regardless of whether or not they made her life a little bit more difficult. Wow. So I think that's a sign of a true mentor. And we're still friends, and she's great, and I love her. So a shout out to Sujata Murthy at UME as well.
Nice. All right. Well, I want to get into something that I know is a big part of your life now that many artists, including myself, are fuzzy on, which after leaving the Recording Academy, you started working with Steve Aoki on the Metaverse, and you went pivot from legacy organization with the Recording Academy to a very future-facing world with NFTs and Web3. What's your new role like? How did you make the transition? And maybe a third question after is, can you tell us about how NFTs work and how artists can make the most of them?
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. You know, a legacy organization to one of the most forward-facing things is definitely a pivot. Not many people expect it. You and I both know this industry is a lot of who you know. And so through my work at the Academy, I got to know Matt Colon, who is Steve Aoki's manager. Matt was the chair of my dance electronics screening committee for a few years. And so we became very close, as most genre managers and committee chairs do. So in end of 2021, beginning of 2022, he knew that I was looking for a new challenge. And because we'd gotten close, he also was like, yeah, this woman is smart, and she's passionate about music, and she understands community. She understands customer service, understands the idea of direct to fan and building that relationship, and how that is the most important relationship that an artist can have, because without those relationships, you don't have a career. Your manager and all those folks, obviously very important. You need to have all those once you're an established artist. But the way you get there is to have a relationship, a authentic, deep relationship with fans. And so to me, that is the most important relationship. And so because of that, he had reached out and said, hey, I know you're looking for a new challenge. I have this new job. Would you be interested? And I said, I don't know anything about Web3 or NFTs. I don't like technology. And he is like, that's okay. You actually don't need to understand any of that aspect of it. You have everything else. And so he brought me over, and I started working in March of 2022. I started working as the managing director of Aokiverse, employee number 1. That means doing everything as we all are used to, all the different hats, nothing new for us. And it's really interesting because what it feels like is sort of streaming in 2008, 2009, or to even take it back, it's Napster in 1998. The tech is here. It's doing major things. To use tech parlance, it is disrupting the industry. But I think all of these technology changes that have happened within the music industry, people get really nervous about them and are unsure of them at first, but ultimately we sort of fold them into our marketing plans is what ends up happening, right? Nobody says, I listen to an MP3 on my iPod anymore, but we all stream music on our phone, which is essentially the same thing.
Pretty much.
That's right. And that's kind of where we are with NFTs and Web3 tech and those sorts of things, is that we're in the MP3 iPod version of it. But as you know, with AI and the sort of multiplying effects of technology, what took us 10 years to figure out with MP3s, what took us 5 years to figure out with streaming is probably going to take us 2 or 3 years to figure out with Web 2. We're already seeing major brands, legacy brands, Porsche, Tiffany, Lamborghini, Time Magazine even, a lot of legacy non-artist brands, fashion houses, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, jumping into the Web3 world. Because at the end of the day, all an NFT is a digital version of a collectible, whether it's a trading card, a limited edition vinyl, a Birkin bag, whatever that item is that's limited, that has status, that has value to you as a collector. This is just a digital version of that. And then that can also be utilized as a membership key. So if you really love an artist and you want to be somebody who is actively participating in the growth of their community, or if you're the super fan, right? Because we think about where an artist's money is coming from, and so they might have millions of fans, but 5 to 10% of their fan base are super fans, and those are people who will buy anything you put out, and they will attend all of your shows, and they will proselytize for you. So they are, in essence, your unpaid street team. So that's sort of the portion of fandom that digital collectibles leverage, is the idea that you can now hold this token in whatever form that is, and you can create a community of folks, let's say, that really truly want to be investors in your product. And I don't necessarily mean investors in a monetary sense. I mean investors in the health and the longevity of your career as an artist. They are invested in you as a person, as an artist. And so that investment can also take the form of holding an NFT where they have paid money. And in our case, we have utility NFTs, which means that they're sort of like membership clubs and frequent flyer clubs kind of rolled into one, a little bit of Patreon plus the Delta medallion status, right? The more you pay in, the higher you get, the more rewards you get, and the closer you get to the artist. So maybe your original buy-in is $400 for a base level NFT. And for that, you get a couple of free tickets a year. You get early access to music. You get discounts on merch, all those kinds of things. Little bonuses that we say, we see you, we appreciate you, thank you for coming. The higher up you get, once you start to put in real money, then it starts to become things like unlimited access to all of Steve's shows, wherever and whenever he is, DJ booth access, the ability to create a song with him that we will then release and you will have part ownership of as a featured artist with royalty rates. You get a house tour given by Steve of his house. So there are real, like if you truly have the ability to be an ultimate superfan and put in a significant amount of money into the investment of Steve as an artist, then, he will give access to you. Now, one thing I definitely say is this doesn't work for all artists. Steve is a very rare artist, I think, who truly loves to meet his fans. He is very active. He loves meet and greets. He's totally fine with hanging out with any fan because that's just his personality. He's just a very open and loving person. Other artists, not so much. They maybe are into the artistry because it gives them a barrier between themselves and the world. And I think Ray LaMontagne, right, used to perform or still does perform with his back to the audience because he's got anxiety. He's got stage fright. I've never personally worked with Ray LaMontagne, so these are just the stories I've heard, but examples of artists who maybe have more going on there. And so maybe giving somebody a tour of their house isn't what they want to do. But you as an artist know your fans, and they probably respond to you because they feel similarly. And so the rewards that are right for Steve may not be right for another artist. But the general overview is, if you are a mid-level artist, right, and you have, let's say, 1,000 to 10,000 fans, and you can get the full dollars from those fans, as in not the post-recoup 0.7 cents from the label that you're getting, the not 0.00007 cents that you're getting from Spotify for every stream. If that fan says, I want to invest in you, I believe in what you're doing, I'm buying your digital collectible NFT for $100, you as the artist get about 99% of that. So when you multiply that by, your 10,000 fans, then what you at that point have is a non-recoupable advance from fans who are now literally invested in the success of your next project, because that also means that the intrinsic value of that NFT goes up or down based on your career, right? And how well you all as a community come together and publicize and work and make that project a success. And I would say that also the difference for fans, right, which is a little bit different from Patreon, which is better, I think, for folks, is that because it is an actual digital item, that means that you're in a Patreon world, right? It's a subscription fee that is non-redeemable. It's sunk cost. Once you put it in, it's done. If you decide, I don't want to be a part of this Patreon anymore, you can stop and cash out, but the money that you've already put in is done. Whereas because these are collectible items, there's a continual secondary market value for it, which means that you as a fan, if you buy it and you get all the rewards you think you want out of it, and then for whatever reason you decide you need out, you can then sell that. You may make more, you may make less, but you still get some of your dollars back. So there actually is, it's an even better value proposition for a fan in that respect, because you're not just getting the Kickstarter levels of whatever my rewards are, which may or may not be enough value for you. You also have the intrinsic value of the sellable item. That is a key for anybody who holds it. So it's a very high level sort of overview of what these can do for artists. But I mean, if we're forgetting about the crypto aspect, we're forgetting the DeFi aspect of it and the idea that there are a lot of bad actors in the space. You do definitely need to do your own research. Don't look at this as a way to make fast money. But I think the technology of it and the direct to fan of it is what is most impressive and helpful, because I think this is where we're going to find our new version of middle class artists, which we don't currently have.
Yeah, the middle class artist is a very rare bird.
Yep.
As is the successful artist, even less so.
No, absolutely. I was just at NFT Paris and was speaking, and I threw out this statistic, which I thought most people knew, but I was like, oh yeah, the music industry, it's like a 95% failure rate for artists. And consistently, all the people who have come back after have been like, oh my God, that statistic was so amazing. I had no idea. And I was like, wait, do you all not know how difficult it is to be a successful artist?
I was actually surprised when you gave that number, because I thought it was going to be much lower. I thought it would be like a 97% failure rate, much lower success rate. I always call it a 1%er business for the people who are, at least for the ones that make it on TV and are making in seven figures or more. That's a very rare world.
Totally. And that's what we used to joke about at Universal, is we'd always say like, oh, U2 is keeping the lights on, or the Stones are keeping the lights on, the Beatles for sure, keeping the lights on for Capitol for a long time, but particularly as artist development disappeared, it took Lynyrd Skynyrd 3 albums to finally hit and have any kind of success. But, what were they before that? And how many albums did it take Queen before they became a success? There's a whole element of artist development and allowing artists to grow and become who they are that doesn't exist anymore. And that has really led to a lot of, like you're saying, a lack of middle class artists, because they just don't give people the time to create or to build their craft anymore. And because of monopolization, Ticketmaster, AEG, Live Nation, it's both the venue and the ticket seller and all those things. There just isn't a lot of opportunity for anyone to sort of work outside the system and have any kind of success. So yeah, it's really difficult. So
yeah. Well, I know we're running short on time here. There were several other questions around NFTs I wanted to ask, but maybe we'll just have you back sometime as the space develops.
Sure. I know. I was going to say there's like two separate podcasts here. One is like music industry and one is NFTs. And I was like, oh, I can talk about NFTs forever.
It's a space that I know has a lot of promise and a lot of people have done really well. I was on Clubhouse when Steve dropped his first NFT. And I had barely even used Clubhouse at the time. And he said, oh, wow, we're at $5 million already. And he was freaking out. Yeah, I was freaking out because I didn't realize that it could do that quickly. It was such a new product and it was such a new way of doing it to reach that level of success. Steve was just over the moon, you could tell, as were all his friends who were on Clubhouse.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So what would you say is one of the biggest challenges you've faced in your own career? Or if you don't want to go there, what's like the weirdest moment you had in your music career?
Oh, man. Okay, so both of these things, because this is a mental health podcast, right? I think I'll probably go back to touring. Again, I love it, but I would say that definitely was the biggest challenge of my career. I'm a person who generally prides herself on being very logical, and, meetings are one of my least favorite things because I generally just want to get stuff done. And so because of that, I'm usually someone who cuts to the hardest stuff, gets it done, moves on. Okay, great. We can deal with feelings later, right? But when you are running on no sleep and you haven't had any food, right, in days, and you're at your 5th European festival, and then you're just looking for some sustenance because it's the only time you have to eat that whole day. And then you're like, what's on the festival menu? Pig's feet. Cool. I probably am not going to eat that. So I'm just going to starve for the next day. Okay, cool. And then you have to re-examine your life choices and be like, why am I here? Did everything get me to being a 35-year-old woman who's not eating pig's feet at a festival in France and is running on 2 hours of sleep and wants to like punch everyone in the throat? Because that's me right now.
Wow, France, that's the best you got?
It was like, I mean, I don't want to like speak à la France because j'adore France, la France. But sometimes you're just like, come on, can I just get a carrot? I mean, really, guys. And also, as you know, touring is amazing. I've seen some really cool places from the car. All of my pictures of like Lebanon or from a car window being like, this looked really cool. I wish I could have seen it at all instead of just the hotel, the car, the venue, back to the car, back to the airplane, and we're out. So yeah, I think my list of like places that I want to go back to is very long because it's super cool. I get to say I've been to Belarus. That's awesome. Who's been to Belarus? But at the same time, it's also like, yeah, but I would have liked to have seen more of Lithuania. That would have been cool. Yeah, it all kind of goes back to touring. It's both the most fun you've ever had and the craziest life you will ever lead at the same time. And within that same vein, one of the moments where I had a very weird moment was South by Southwest. What was that? Probably 2012, 2011. And I'm walking around with Moby. Okay, so it must have been 2011. Walking around with Moby. And listen, Moby and Michael Stipe, not dissimilar, right?
Vegetarians.
And so also, short, white, bald guys. Then we do run into Michael Stipe. And they are friends, so they start chatting. And then Mo introduces me to him, and I'm like, wow, okay, surreal. I'm getting introduced to Michael Stipe by Moby. Who would have thunk it? And then they spend the first couple of minutes talking about how much they have been mistaken for each other during this particular South by Southwest. Because they look very similar.
I never recognized that before. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Looking at Mo and going, Michael Stipe. And he's like, nope. And then going to Michael and being like, hey, Moby. And he's like, nope, but thanks.
Well, they're both really nice people, too. They're both very gracious. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
Michael Stipe was sort of my neighbor a long time ago when I was living in Athens. So he was always very generous.
Totally. And I thought you might have a Michael Stipe. That's why I was like, oh, this is the story I got to use. Winger's going to get it.
Oh, I've got a good Michael Stipe story. I'll jump on my weird one. I was sitting in a coffee shop and Michael walked in with Kurt Cobain, Frances Bean, and Courtney Love. And they sat down at the table next to me. And Frances Bean...
shut the front door.
I think she was probably 2 or 3 years old, something. But she had one of these little...
yeah, she couldn't have been.
Yeah, she had one of these little punching dolls that you'd pull on a little lever and it would punch. And she came over and punched me. And then Kurt Cobain looks at me with these crazy blue eyes. And he just says, oh, sorry, she loves violence. There, that's my best Michael Stipe moment story. It's not even about Michael Stipe, but still.
I know. I was going to say that's a Kurt Cobain story, but like also crazy. Yeah. I mean, who looks at somebody and goes, sorry, my daughter loves violence? Like, apparently Kurt Cobain does. Yet somehow makes perfect sense.
Yeah. It's one I'll never forget. That one. Those are the sorts of stories. That we
absolutely
get in the music business.
That's what makes it all worth it, right?
Yeah, it does.
It's not the lack of money. It's not the waking up in cat pee. It's the getting punched by a baby Frances Bean and having Kurt Cobain tell you that his daughter loves violence.
Yep.
The music industry.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today to talk to us. Do you have any final thoughts you want to leave with us here so that we don't end on violent Frances Bean?
I know, the poor girl. She has no idea that her childhood stories are being bandied about this way. Yeah, I think if your mental health is strong enough and you really want to be an artist, the world can always use more artists, truth tellers, empathetic folks who put up a light and a mirror to things that the world needs to see. And I would also say that if you're interested in digital collectibles, please don't hesitate. I know it can be scary, but I didn't know anything about it when I jumped in, and everyone is very willing to help because it's such a nascent space. And we absolutely need more women, more people of color, more folks who are representative of marginalized communities, so that we can create this space as something that works for everyone from the beginning, as opposed to having to try and reinvent the wheel in retrospect. I'm always happy to help. I do a ton of conferences and a ton of one-on-one talks to just kind of get people involved. And I just really want to encourage any artist, because I do think in a very non-cliche way, it is the future.
Thank you again for joining us, Shannon. It's been such a pleasure to see you again, as always. Our next guest will be Ryan Dusick, former drummer for Maroon 5. He's also the author of a new book, Harder to Breathe, which documents the rise of the band, his struggles with addiction, and finally redemption with his new career as a licensed therapist. If you enjoyed today's podcast, feel free to send me an email at hello@artistmanagers.io. We'd love to hear from you. This is Music Career Therapy brought to you by artistmanagers.io. See you next time.